This show contains general information about legal matters. This information is not advice and should not be treated as such. If you have any specific questions about any legal matter, you should consult your attorney or other professional legal services provider. Be advised that while Cheapskate is a lawyer, he is not your lawyer. Also, Jimmy Franks is an idiot, and you should never take his advice.
You're listening to Song Crimes. I'm professional idiot Jimmy Franks, and along with real-life attorney Cheapskate, we explore the statements and confessions made by songwriters in popular music and pass judgment on those who choose to operate outside the law. Court is now in session.
We're doing the Halloween episode of Song Crimes.
It's going to be full of spooky frights.
Scary civil judgments. That doesn't sound as scary as I thought it would. Are you going to be trick-or-treating this year?
I am not. I'm going to be in the middle of moving over this holiday, so I'm just not going to have time to put together a costume.
Well, if you wanted to be a real jerk, you could put some decorations up at your old place and leave the porch light on.
Oh, that would be immense jerkdom. I kind of love it, but I think my landlords would not like it. They wouldn't want to clean up the eggs afterwards.
Let's check in with Warren Zevon and the Werewolf of London.
Werewolves of London.
So the first line of the song: I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand, walking through the streets of Soho in the rain. So far, the werewolf hasn't done anything wrong, but that is a suspicious person. So is Warren Zevon in trouble for not reporting a werewolf sighting to the police?
Right. Well, because I want to pretend that everything's taking place in the United States, I did my research and I found the largest city in the United States named London, and that is London, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Population 9,904 people.
A charming town.
Right. They certainly have Chinese menus and a place called Soho. That's where this is happening.
Okay.
There is generally no legal obligation for anybody to report anything to the police unless it's child abuse and you're a mandated reporter.
Okay.
But he might be in trouble if he's making up this werewolf and he reports to people that there is one, because Ohio has a statute where you can be charged with inducing panic, where you're circulating a false report of a catastrophe.
Okay.
I don't know if a werewolf qualifies as a catastrophe or not. If I am a very creative prosecutor who really wants to throw the book at Warren Zevon for some reason, I might make that argument.
Sure. Well, the story, the plot thickens a little bit farther into the song. It sounds like this werewolf is known in the community as someone who has been committing violent crime. The lyric, if you hear him howling around your kitchen door, better not let him in. So this werewolf has been up to some business in London, Ohio. He's stalking and prowling, right? That's what I'm seeing here, this werewolf.
That's going to depend on whether this is the first time he is howling around this person's kitchen door or whether he's making a pattern of it.
Okay.
In Ohio, there's a distinction. If somebody is doing it once and you are trying to cause someone else to believe that you're going to cause physical harm to them, in Ohio, that's charged as menacing. If they make it a pattern, rather, then you can charge them with stalking, which carries a more severe penalty. And even if the police and prosecuting attorney don't want to get involved, the occupant of this kitchen can go and file for a restraining order.
This werewolf, as I said, is known for being a violent member of the community. The next lyric is, little old lady got mutilated late last night, Werewolves of London again. And later in the song, he does warn Jim to stay away from this werewolf. Quote, better stay away from him. He'll rip your lungs out, Jim. I'd like to meet his tailor. So this werewolf is at least suspected of committing grievous injury or murder. Circling back to my first question, is Warren Zevon in trouble for not reporting this werewolf that is maybe on the local police's most wanted list?
Again, probably not unless he is actively covering up these offenses. If he's helping the werewolf escape from the scene of the crime by, getting him to his tailor to make up another set of clothes, then he might be charged as an accessory after the fact. But again, generally, no duty to report anything to the police if you don't want to.
He's just a jerk for not dropping dime on this werewolf.
Yeah, nice going, pal. Yeah. The werewolf, you could probably charge him with murder, but the thing is, though, is a werewolf really in control of themselves at the time of the crime? In Ohio, if you're going to offer an insanity defense, you have to say that at the time of the killing, I didn't know the difference between right and wrong. I didn't understand that what I was doing was a bad thing to do. Some depictions of werewolves might fit within that. Other depictions might not.
Let's review the charges on Warren Zevon and the Werewolf of London, Ohio. Stalking, prowling?
Probably either menacing or stalking, depending on how many times the werewolf is doing this. Then likely murder for the werewolf, and then he can offer an insanity defense. I don't see any charges against Warren Zevon here.
What's your sentence?
I am going to sentence the werewolf to a Monster Squad-style nard kicking.
Well, I sentence Warren Zevon and the rest of the residents of London, Ohio, to visit Nasty's Sports Bar and Grill on Scioto Darby Road in Hilliard instead of Trader Vic's, because they have what looks like a pretty awesome menu, a lot of big screen TVs, and surprisingly werewolf-free.
Excellent choice.
A song with maybe one of the funkiest organ tracks in popular music, Stevie Wonder's Superstition. Superstition ain't the way. So, Cheapskate, maybe I'm kind of coming into this one blind. This was one that you suggested, so maybe you can give me just a recap of what's going on in this song before we get into the specific charges.
All right. The story of the song generally is that a whole bunch of unlucky, horrible things have happened, and it ends up with... actually, I'm not completely clear on how it ends up. When you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer.
It sounds like Stevie had a bad night.
Yeah.
First few lines, very superstitious, writings on the wall, very superstitious, ladders about to fall, 13-month-old baby broke the looking glass. Whoa. So child endangerment, neglect? Who's letting this baby run around knocking ladders and mirrors off the wall? And drawing on the wall, too. Yeah.
Stevie is another one of our Detroit artists. We are giving the Wayne County District Attorney quite the workout on this show. If a person fails to act in a way that leads to a physical harm to a child, like mirror breaking and glass cutting the child, that's fourth-degree child abuse, and that's a misdemeanor. It's punishable by up to a year in jail.
So later we go, very superstitious, wash your face and hands, rid me of the problems, do all that you can, keep me in a daydream, keep me going strong. So he's looking for some downers and some uppers. Stevie is trying to hook up with some prescription meds, sedatives, possibly some...
wonder if he's buying them from the Ramones.
He's probably going to get in trouble for that unless he's got a script from his doctor.
Yeah, most sedatives are either Schedule II or Schedule III drugs. Drugs in the U.S. Are on a series of schedules based on their potential for abuse and addiction. The lower the number, the more serious the offense. And the penalty depends on which schedule it's on. Now, faking a prescription in Michigan, it is going to get you up to 4 years and $5,000 fine. Otherwise, if it's not a fake prescription, he could be charged with soliciting someone to sell the sedatives to him.
You could be charged with asking someone to sell you prescriptions.
Yeah, anytime that you are asking someone else to try and commit a crime that benefits you, you can be charged with soliciting. This can get kind of weird in some cases. Sometimes, like in a protection order case, you'll get somebody who has a protection order against someone else, and then the person with the order will change their mind and call that other person and say, hey, come over and talk to me. And a real jerk of a DA might say, okay, I'm charging you with violating a protection order. I'm charging you with soliciting someone to violate a protection order.
Oh, geez. Wow. Huh. Okay. Well, Stevie clearly is shaken from the events of the past, whatever. He's upset about the kid going crazy in the house and drawing on the wall. He's all shaken up. So to quote, very superstitious, nothing more to say, very superstitious, the devil's on his way. Maybe there's a little bit more here to this. Stevie should be medicated because now he's singing about the imminent arrival of Satan. I don't know if that means he's if the stuff that's going on here with the baby that's running around the house, if that's part of a cult ritual, they're gonna sacrifice that kid later. Maybe that's where the drugs come in. I don't know. But what happens if is he running a cult in Detroit? And if so, are there laws on the books about cult rituals? Certainly, if he was planning on doing something unpleasant with that child. But in general, in general, what's the story on cults in Detroit?
Right. So, believe it or not, Michigan has a blasphemy statute. I'm going to read it out to.
Oh.
I'm going to read it out here. Any person who shall willfully blaspheme the holy name of God by cursing or contumeliously reproaching God shall be guilty of a misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor cult practice?
Yeah, misdemeanor blasphemy. Now, this is 100% unconstitutional. There is no way this.
Yeah.
There's no way this survives the First Amendment. But even if the Supreme Court says this law is unconstitutional, it doesn't automatically repeal the law. It just sits there on the books, and the Supreme Court just orders you not to enforce it. It doesn't go away until the legislature comes in and says, all right, we repeal this law. So if tomorrow morning the U.S. government decided to repeal the First Amendment, this blasphemy statute could go back into effect. That seems unlikely, but a lot of unlikely things have happened in American politics over the last few years. So I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it, but maybe a little. This may be the most cuckoo bird thing we've touched on so far on this show. I have questions. When did this law land on the books? I mean, this sounds like some Puritan original settler stuff. Yeah, this is it's from the Michigan Criminal Code of 33. I don't know if this was a new statute at the time or if they were just compiling all the existing statutes. And in the 30s, there were different standards for the First Amendment. So you might have actually gotten away with prosecuting somebody for blasphemy under this statute.
Okay. I was wondering if you had any instances of anyone actually getting charged with this or being prosecuted with this.
I wasn't able to find any, but I spent more of my time looking up what the word contumeliously means.
And what does it mean?
It means insolently abusive and humiliating.
There you go. That's your learning moment on Song Crimes.
Yeah, and how tough do you have to be to humiliate God?
Well, Stevie Wonder's doing his best in this song. So let's review the charges. Child endangerment and neglect. Guilty?
Possibly. We don't know. Again, that comma in there doesn't make it 100% clear whether the 13-month-old baby broke the looking glass or whether somebody else broke the looking glass that was next to the baby.
Okay. Well, it's certainly not a safe environment for the baby with ladders falling down and broken glass on the floor.
Right. Writings on the wall at the very beginning, so it's not very well patrolled. You've got vandalism going on in the area.
Yeah, and it sounds like Stevie's conked out on some kind of narcotic cocktail.
Yeah.
Where he got those is a question.
Yeah, he may be facing charge of forging a prescription and or soliciting someone to sell him drugs without a prescription. In the weird mirror universe where the First Amendment doesn't exist, he's prosecuted for blasphemy.
I sentence Stevie Wonder to go to the doctor and talk to him about his superstitious anxiety, and maybe the doctor will prescribe him some legitimately obtained Xanax for his anxiety.
And I am going to sentence Stevie Wonder to do some graffiti cleanup, do something about those writings on the wall.
And since this is a very special Halloween episode, it wouldn't be very Halloween-y if we did not visit Bobby Boris Pickett and the Monster Mash.
He did the Monster Mash.
The Monster Mash.
It was a graveyard smash.
He did the mash.
I would like to make a note here, do a shout out to author Chris Schleicher on Twitter, who says, it's that time of year again where I remind you all that there's no evidence in the text that the Monster Mash takes place on Halloween. It's just a fun party for monsters that could be in April for all we know. That is the kind of nitpicking that makes him an honorary song criminologist.
Somebody else on Twitter pointed out that the song The Monster Mash is a song about the Monster Mash, and we've never actually heard the real Monster Mash. We've just heard a song about it.
Right, it's like a tribute band's tribute to the Monster Mash.
So this song contains multitudes.
Yeah, I'm sure that there is a Bobby Boris Pickett tribute band performing in Branson as we speak.
Yeah, but you got to be careful when you start pulling the thread on this sweater, because you don't know when it's going to end. But we'll give it a shot.
Or pulling the bandage on this mummy.
So Bobby Pickett is working in the lab late one night when his eyes beheld an eerie sight. For his monster from his slab began to rise. Okay, time out. I didn't see any letters after Bobby Pickett's name. There's no MD. He has no bona fides that he should be working on any living creature or dead creature for that matter in his quote lab end quote. Do we have a classic case of corpse tampering or grave robbing here?
Well, again, he's not expressly saying that this is a corpse that he's bringing back to life. This could be a Gila monster. But assuming that he is playing out the classic Frankenstein story, we'll go to Massachusetts, where Bobby Pickett is from. Illegally disinterring a body carries up to 3 years in prison and a $4,000 fine. And an accessory to that is punished in the same way. So Igor of the Chains and Bang Hounds will probably get the same penalty.
Okay. But if he legally, is there a way to legally obtain a corpse if you're not a doctor or a medical school?
Probably not. I mean, a corpse, though, is technically the property of your next of kin. That's why we can't have mandatory organ donation in the United States. We have some case law about this. There was Ohio tried to do mandatory cornea donations after death, and then the next of kin said, no, that's my property and you're taking it without compensation, and they won.
Okay. Now, this might be a little grim, but hey, it's the Halloween episode. What if Bobby is this deceased person's next of kin?
Then you are probably going to get sanctioned for a bunch of violations of the health code.
Well, whatever it is, it's not cool, but let's move on. Then we jump into the chorus. Suddenly, to my surprise, he did the mash. He did the Monster Mash. The Monster Mash, it was a graveyard smash. So there's a lot of mashing going on in the graveyard. It doesn't seem like an appropriate place to have a graveyard party, at least without the permission of the owners or caretakers of the graveyard.
It definitely isn't. And Massachusetts has a lot of old Puritan laws in the books. One of them is a criminal offense for committing a nuisance at a place of burial. It's punishable by a fine of between $5 and $100. And you can tell from the penalty that this is a pretty old law that they haven't updated in a while.
Well, I mean, for $100, if it means having a spooky Halloween themed party, you might be willing to roll the dice on that. But
yeah, and that there's a range of penalties, so if it's a particularly good party, the judge may let you off with $30 to $50. There is a separate penalty, though, if they're vandalizing a cemetery. The band we later find out is called the Crypt Kicker 5. If they are literally kicking crypts until they fall over, you can probably charge them with vandalizing a cemetery, and that's up to 5 years and $5,000.
Okay. Later in the song, from my laboratory in the castle east to the master bedroom where the vampires feast. The ghouls all came from their humble abodes to get a jolt from my electrodes. Couple things here. So Bobby Pickett has a master bedroom in his castle where he is aware of vampires feasting. That's probably something he should be reporting and not necessarily harboring these vampires while they feast. Is he aiding and abetting a crime by knowing that vampires are feasting in his bedroom?
Well, the exact crime you would charge him with depends on what he's doing here. Is he planning on helping the vampires attack people, or whether he is just leading people into this room where the vampires feast? If he has made an agreement to commit the crime, the underlying crime being, vampiric battery, if he's committing that along with them, then you charge him as a co-conspirator.
Okay.
If he's helping without actually committing the crime, Massachusetts would call him an accessory before the fact. It's charged differently, but in Massachusetts the penalty is the same, which is being punished just in the same way that the vampires themselves would be punished.
Okay.
So it's a distinction without a difference in Massachusetts, but in some states there's a difference.
All right. Well, I'm going to say that maybe the Bride of Frankenstein bumped into him and was like, hey, Bobby, there's some vampires in your bedroom feasting on some dudes, just so you know. So he wasn't really like complicit in it, but he is aware that this is something that's going on in his house.
Yeah. In that case, I don't know if you can charge him with anything. If he is saying, oh, hey, cool, you should check out the master bedroom with the knowledge that there are vampires in there, you can probably hit him with accessory before the fact.
Well, you should probably ask him to stop. I mean, he's just not a very good host if he's letting people wander into a vampire feast. But
unless they're the hypnotic kind of vampires.
Then the next line, the ghouls all came from their humble abodes to get a jolt from my electrodes. So there's possibly some BDSM stuff happening in one of the other bedrooms. Ghouls are being electrocuted voluntarily. I think we touched on this in the Pat Benatar song, that there are some laws on the books about being injured willfully. But does Bobby Pickett, as the host, or whoever's doing the electrocution, is there something they should be concerned about, or are they facing charges if the electrocution goes wrong?
Well, as we discussed in Pat Benatar, you can't consent to being battered unless, it's a regulated athletic exhibition. The question of what's happening here is going to depend on whether a ghoul is human or not.
Oh,
which is something that's not really spelled out for us in the song or in ghoul lore.
Let's say I'm the prosecutor, and I'm going to argue that if they're not, they were at one time.
If you're going to argue that a ghoul is more like a human, then the use of the electrodes here probably bumps us up to battery with a deadly weapon, because you very well can kill people with the electrodes. No battery, pun intended.
But pun received. Sorry.
Yeah. Penalty for battery with a deadly weapon in Massachusetts is up to 15 years in prison and up to $10,000 fine. Now, if the ghouls aren't human, you could try and charge this as cruelty to animals.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I guess so. Does that have a worse? What's the potential sentence on that? Is that worse than the other thing?
No, it's actually less. It's up to 7 years and $5,000, but that is actually a higher penalty than misdemeanor battery in Massachusetts. So if you beat up a guy in a fight in Massachusetts, you're looking at maybe 18 months. If you are beating up a dog in a fight, then you're looking at up to 7 years.
The lyrics go, the zombies were having fun. The party had just begun. The guests included the Wolfman, Dracula and his son. Anything wrong with having werewolves, vampires, or zombies at your party in Massachusetts?
If there's a cover charge, possibly. Massachusetts has a sideshow ban, and if you are, if you are exhibiting people with deformities in exchange for money, which it sounds like Wolfman, Dracula, etc., would qualify, then you're fined up to $500.
Okay.
So if they're getting in for free, there's no trouble. But if you have a barker out front saying, "See, the amazing Wolfman," and you're charging them 2 bits or whatever to get in, you're looking at a fine.
Okay. All right. So a lot of charges to review here. Grave robbing? Guilty or not guilty?
Well, again, the song doesn't tell us that the monster is a corpse. So you would have to prove that with evidence outside the song. Based purely on what's in the song, I don't think we can get him for tampering with the corpse.
It could just be a really ugly person.
Right.
Which isn't kind. That's not nice. So Bobby's definitely guilty of being a jerk.
It could be a Muppet-style monster.
Yeah. So partying in a graveyard. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty. Either a very trivial fine or a somewhat tougher one if they're vandalizing the place.
Okay. And then if he's charging a cover, he might also have an issue with some of his guests.
That's going to get him for exhibiting people with deformities for money.
And then for the S&M dungeon that he's running over in the West Wing, what are we looking at?
He's guilty of either battery with a deadly weapon or cruelty to animals, depending on what you think of ghouls.
And what about the vampire room?
It is hard to say what he is doing there. Without additional evidence, I can't make a determination of if he's guilty of anything or not.
Okay. Well, he's definitely got he should lawyer up. He's got some stuff to deal with. After this, on November 1st, he's going to have to answer some questions.
Definitely. My sentence for Bobby Boris Pickett is that he decides to record a song with great social meaning only to have nobody take him seriously because he is the Monster Mash guy.
My sentence for Bobby Pickett is to find an accredited online university where he can get do some additional work and working his way towards an MD or other medical license so he can operate on people in some capacity in his life. Thanks to our announcer, Deb Slater. If there's a song you'd like for us to feature, you can send your song ideas to songcrimes@gmail.com. If you like the songs you hear, buy them on iTunes, or even better, support your local independent music store. And if you like the rest of the show, please subscribe, rate, review, and tell your friends about the show. And as always, don't do anything stupid, but if you do, keep your mouth shut. Court is adjourned.
Would you like to go undercover to fight discrimination? If so, you can become a fair housing tester. Find your local fair housing organization at nationalfairhousing.org.